Released in 2000 as a direct sequel to the hit survival horror game, Dino Crisis 2 sees Regina return to investigate another incident involving the secret continued research of the dangerous third energy experiments, as well as the disappearance of a research facility and an entire surrounding town. This time, she's joined by her new partner Dylan in finding out what happened and rescuing any survivors they find. While keeping the same tone and beautiful soundtrack, there is a hard shift in gameplay from survival horror to arcade-style gameplay, but still retains exploration and puzzle solving as key factors. Still beloved by many fans of the series, this became another instant classic from the horror legends at Capcom. Here, I will be examining the three main box arts from Europe, North America, and Japan. The European cover is pretty simple, with just the one image, but it's really visually striking and one that conveys quite a bit about the game and its new theme. We see this dinosaur, the fearsome and deadly T-Rex, lunging at us with its mouth open, baring his sharp teeth, saliva hanging from its fangs, ready to devour whatever unfortunate prey is the misery of being in its presence. I love the oranges and browns used, as it doesn't just show its skin/scale colour, but gives the impression that it's in the middle of a large fight. Something's exploded nearby, you're surrounded by fire and trapped, fighting for your life against this colossal beast. It's hungry, it's angry, and it's not gonna stop. You're in his domain now, and it may as well be hell. The big change from this one is actually quite subtle, in that it doesn't convey as much horror as it did for Dino Crisis. For a start, there's no air of mystery, no fear in the darkness, no evidence that something horrific happened here. Instead, because this game focuses more on arcade-style action, it makes sense that the cover should follow. There's less unnerving horror and more intense, fast-paced action. You don't need to find answers to this strange nightmare-like situation anymore, as Regina understands what horror she'll face as a result of the third energy experiment. You need to survive the dangerous wooded areas and piece together the clues you find to solve the mystery, but you already know who your enemy is and why it's there. This cover's putting the player in the middle of the action, the moment where you're face to face with a gigantic Tyrannosaurus Rex, fighting for your life. It's like you can hear the roar already. The font and colour of the title are exactly the same as the ones from the first game for the European release, with the addition of the number 2 at the end. Also, like the first game, we have the BFCC rating of 15, that's in the UK, the Capcom logo, and the now defunct Virgin Interactive logo. For a game that now has an additional protagonist to play as along with Regina, it does seem like an odd decision that they only decided to show Regina on her own and not her trap partner Dylan. Throughout all of the 5 different box arts that were released, not a single one shows them together. Maybe they wanted to have players feel more connected to the first game and its protagonist by having that familiar face there and didn't want to discourage those who felt there were too many changes. Either that, or Regina somewhat became the mascot for the series, and having her made it more likely to be successful. So for the North American version, we have the silhouette of Regina running for her life, supposedly from the T-Rex, sharply contrasted in the background, with pale blue colouring and glowing yellow eyes. It's funny to mention that I thought the first game could have done with a gun to show action, and now they do add one, but it's unseen in detail in her outline. It's interesting to note that her model has also changed between the first game and its sequel, in that while her previous version looked more Japanese, her update resembles a more Western look. The fact we can't see this is still very odd. It's not like she's a mysterious or hidden character. We know who she is, what she looks like, her personality and her goals from the first entry, so to keep her as nothing but a shadow is a weird design choice. The best I can think of is that it could be a reference to the fact that she's the one that's gone back in time here. Instead of dinosaurs coming to the present like they did in Ibis Island, the Trat team used a time gate to go back in time to find the remains of Edward City. The dinosaurs are the natives here, and the humans have invaded their space. Regina here is the anomaly. What makes this box even more unique is that it's the only cover in the main releases that shows both a protagonist character and a dinosaur at the same time. All the others just show one or the other, never both. The font used is the same as the one featured in Dino Crisis 1's American release, albeit with a subtle white glow instead of shadowy dark. This was the last release that used this font, as it dropped it for the sequel to be in line with the European and Japanese ones. This specific cover art wasn't actually used exclusively in America for its release. The PC version released in Europe decided to use a slightly altered version of this art instead of its respective regions. While the T-Rex is posed differently, its eyes don't glow yellow. There's an actual background that shows the setting, and there's a blur on Regina's model. It's clear that this was very heavily based on the American version. I'm not sure why they would have decided on this change for one of their releases, but I suppose it does add a bit of variety, which is always nice to see. The Japanese cover is the most visually different from the other two, and chooses this unique style that contains little to nothing at all of the previous cover art that's come before it from any of the regions. Firstly, we have a view of the setting, the location of where Edward City has suddenly found itself, a forest, millions of years ago in the past due to the third energy experiment. There's a lot of greenery, which is the main colour palette this time, a lot of trees and a waterfall flowing down into a deep river. We can also see some flying creatures in the back, which I believe are Dimorphodons, judging from their body shapes and long tails. As you may have already noticed, the font used is exactly the same as its previous one, just like the European version, except this one has been altered with a glowing green outline that more represents the setting that our heroes find themselves in. It works well with the colour scheme of the whole box, and I think this was the best choice. Anything else would have looked too contrasting with the background image. Underneath the title we have in Japanese also written Dino Crisis 2. I'm not sure what it is, but I always like when Japanese titles written in English have text underneath translating it. Maybe adding a little flair or variation to what would just be simple words. Another contrasting point to its European and North American counterparts is that this art doesn't convey anything horror at all. There's no dinosaurs looking like they're about to devour you, no people running away from being brutally killed, no scratch marks against the landscape, no blood splatter or drips, no hint of danger, and nothing left open to interpretation or lost to the unknown. It's a pretty simple and clear image of the setting, and that's it. Not even the Dimorphodons in the background seem to pose much of a threat. Even research suggests that they were highly speculated to feed on small animals and insects, and less likely on human-sized prey. It's fair enough if they didn't want to convey the same sense of dread the first title did, as it's a different gameplay style which is pointed out at the bottom. It does seem a little too peaceful, however. On the first game, we had the bottom bar read Panic Horror, which signifies its new iteration of how horror gameplay is to be approached. This one, however, has been replaced with Adventure Action, signifying it's stepping away from its original focus and putting a bigger emphasis on action. In my opinion, I think it was a shame that they took this route, as it had already had a great first entry into their panic horror genre, which they seem to have just abandoned in favour of something that feels more like it was designed to be a straight up video game as opposed to a dark story to be immersed in. Now, we can't ignore one of the most distinctive parts of this image, aside from its heavy green colour palette, the text above and below the title. The text in the back can be slightly tricky to read, great idea for half-transparent white writing against light objects, so allow me to read it for you. 1 year has passed from the mission to bring Dr. Kirk back to time, the ultimate clean energy technology and potentially the most powerful weapon known to man. This was the inevitable nature of the third energy. The research is now in the hands of the government. Once again, an accident has occurred. This time the scale is far larger than before, and the entire research metropolis, Edward City, has vanished. The government organized a mission to rescue the researchers and retrieve the research data. In a yet incomplete time-folding device, Timegate, it was decided that a troop be sent to the exact time and place where they believed Edward City had vanished. No one could foresee how this mission would end. No one but Regina. Now, when I saw that, I always assumed it was just the introduction narration as the game opens up with a man explaining to us the plot of the story. But it turns out that this is actually quite different. It's fairly similar in what it's talking about, but this is not the same script used. The actual intro goes like this.
1 year has passed since the third energy incident. Dr. Kirk's research on third energy has been taken over by a government agency, and massive research has begun at a base somewhere in the Midwest. However, in their pursuit of immediate results, they have failed to take the necessary precautions, and once again, an accident has occurred. This time, the entire research base, military institution, and a small town close by have disappeared. In their place, there now lies a jungle from another time.
Finally, very clear on the front cover for a reason, we have the two warning labels underneath the Capcom logo. The yellow warning label reads, this product contains violence, blood and horror images. And the red one reads, this game contains violent scenes and grotesque images. A big thank you to those on Reddit that translated them for me. I have to say that I really like all three of these cover arts a lot, and it's always a difficult choice to have to pick one over the other. The Japanese one has to be third, as even though I find it interesting, I don't think it's as visually appealing as the others. Then it'll have to be the American cover, which is nice, but I don't understand why Regina is blacked out and why blue is such a prominent colour. I like the European cover the most because it has that fear factor involved, and the colour scheme of being engulfed in a nightmare. Thanks for watching, and let me know, what did you think about them, and which one is your favourite?